And it was very important satire. It was satirizing a whole system of beliefs that are pervasive in this country, not just Archie's working class, but all the way up to the top.
There was one man whom Carroll O'Connor truly despised, a man who bore the name he was given at birth, John Carroll O'Connor. His story begins on August 2nd, 1924, in the unyielding streets of the Bronx, New York, born into an Irish-American clan. It was a world woven from the threads of education, storytelling, and unshakable tradition. But the world he entered was one of shadow and scarcity. His early life was forged in the crucible of the Great Depression. These were experiences that etched into his soul a profound understanding of class, of hardship, and the fractured prisms through which people view their world. These were the raw materials, the perspectives he would one day channel with such startling authenticity into his art. His path first led him through the hallowed halls of Wake Forest University, and then westward to the University of Montana. But the quiet life of academia was not yet his to claim. O'Connor's scholarly pursuits were abruptly interrupted by the call of a world at war. He served in the United States Merchant Marine during the global tumult of World War II, a formative period that revealed to him the very essence of resilience. He learned of discipline and witnessed firsthand the intricate, often contradictory, tapestry of human behavior. When peace returned, so did O'Connor, back to his studies. He would ultimately earn a degree in English, a testament to a lifelong affair with literature and the power of language. This love for human expression first led him to the classroom, to a life of teaching, before a deeper calling, the irresistible pull of the stage, revealed his true destiny. In the 1950s, a journey of discovery took him across the Atlantic, back to the land of his ancestors, Ireland, where he immersed himself in his studies at University College Dublin. It was here, on Irish soil, that a profound connection to the theatre took root in his very soul. He began to walk the boards, appearing in stage productions, his voice finding its resonance in the hallowed spaces of live performance. Every role was a lesson, every line a sharpening of the instrument he was becoming, unknowingly preparing for a destiny that loomed on a distant American horizon. O'Connor eventually returned to the United States, and through the turbulent 1960s, he threw himself into the relentless pursuit of a foothold in the industry. He became a familiar face in the flickering glow of the television set, a guest player in a dozen different stories, a character actor leaving his mark one scene at a time. And on the silver screen, he carved out supporting parts in major Hollywood films, leaving memorable impressions in epics like Time's Cleopatra, Time's in 1963, the wartime comedy Time's What Did You Do in the War, Daddy? * in 1966, and the gritty noir of Time's Point Blank Times in 1967. With each performance, a portrait of his immense range began to emerge, an ability to shift effortlessly between the weight of serious drama and the nuanced timing of a comedic player. However, for all his undeniable talent, it wasn't until the dawn of the 1970s that the role which would define him finally appeared. A single part was waiting, a role that would not only define a career, but elevate him into the annals of television history. That role was Archie Bunker, in the groundbreaking sitcom Time's All in the Family *, which ran from 1971 to 1979. From his worn armchair in Queens, Archie Bunker was more than a character. He was a vessel for the simmering prejudices, the deep-seated frustrations, and the seismic generational divides of American society. At a time of profound social change, many actors would have shied away from portraying a character so steeped in controversy. With such polarizing views on display, O'Connor didn't hesitate. He embraced the challenge. He breathed into Archie a profound depth, a startling complexity, and even fleeting moments of raw vulnerability. This was a deliberate act of artistry, ensuring the man on screen was never just a one-dimensional caricature. Instead, O'Connor's masterful performance transformed Archie into a mirror, reflecting the turbulent soul of America as it grappled with race, shifting gender roles, fractured politics, and profound cultural change. Viewers may have recoiled from Archie's worldview, but in him, they recognized something familiar. They understood him, and in a strange alchemy of performance, they found themselves laughing with him just as often as they laughed at him. All in the Family Times was no longer just a television show. It became a cultural phenomenon, shattering the unspoken barriers of the medium. It dared to drag into the living room spotlight topics once relegated to whispers: racism, women's rights, the Vietnam War, and economic inequality. These were subjects that had rarely, if ever, found a voice in the polished world of primetime television. O'Connor's monumental work on the show earned him 4 Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series, cementing his place in the pantheon of television's greatest performers. He would later reprise the iconic role of Archie in the spin-off series Archie Bunker's Place, from 1979 to 1983, further extending a legacy and influence that was already immense. But Carroll O'Connor was a man far too vast to be defined by a single role. As the 1980s gave way to the 90s, he would reinvent himself entirely, stepping into another iconic role, this time as the compassionate and deeply thoughtful police chief Bill Gillespie, in the television adaptation of In the Heat of the Night, from 1988 to 1995. In stark, deliberate contrast to Archie, Gillespie was a character defined by his evolution, a man who was constantly learning, growing, and adapting to the simmering racial tensions and the hard realities of crime in a small Mississippi town. Behind the camera, O'Connor's influence was just as profound. He served as a producer and a writer on the series, irrefutable proof that his immense skill extended far beyond the craft of acting and deep into the art of storytelling itself. His creative vision was the guiding hand that helped shape In the Heat of the Night Times into a long-running, resonant success, one that showcased the breathtaking scope of his range, not just as a performer, but as a true leader in his industry. But to understand the man, we must rewind the film. The year is 1962. Carroll O'Connor is in Rome, working on the sprawling, epic historical film Times Cleopatra *, a production already notorious for its extravagant sets, its staggering budget overruns, and the immense pressure of filming alongside the titanic legends of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Amid this whirlwind, O'Connor and his wife, Nancy Fields, made a decision that was profoundly personal, one that would alter the course of their lives forever. They adopted a 6-day-old infant boy, naming him Hugh, a deeply symbolic choice, a name that honored O'Connor's own brother, whose life had been tragically cut short just 1 year before. This decision to adopt was more than an act of kindness. It was a profound statement of the couple's humanity. A testament to their desire to offer a sanctuary to a child in need, it also cast a spotlight on O'Connor's unwavering devotion to family, a quiet anchor in the swirling tempest of an international film production. For O'Connor, this adoption became a defining chapter in the story of his life, a bittersweet symphony of new joy and old sorrow, as he welcomed into his world a son whose name would forever echo the memory of a cherished soul, taken from them far too soon. As the years passed, young Hugh grew up in the shadow of sound stages and the glow of studio lights. At just 17, he stepped onto this stage himself, taking on a modest, yet pivotal role within the familiar world of Archie Bunker's Place. He was a courier, a seemingly small cog in a large machine, but this position offered Hugh an intimate view of the very universe that had forged his father's legendary career. For O'Connor, now a titan of television, it was a chance to share not only the magic, but also the immense weight of a professional set, forging a bond with his son that went beyond blood. It was an unspoken lesson in discipline, an immersion into the very fabric of the entertainment industry. In time, O'Connor would go even further, weaving a character into existence, Officer Lonnie Jameson, for the acclaimed series In the Heat of the Night, a role conceived and crafted specifically for Hugh. This was no mere Hollywood favor. It was a father's heartfelt effort to build a safe harbor for his son, a space where he could find his own voice, creatively and professionally, under the watchful eye of a man who knew intimately the treacherous peaks and shadowed valleys of an actor's life. This singular act illuminated O'Connor's profound dedication, not just as a parent, but as a mentor, seamlessly merging the two most important worlds of his life in a gesture both rare and deeply moving. But a shadow was lengthening. On the 28th of March, 1995, tragedy struck the O'Connor family. Hugh, after a long and harrowing battle with his personal demons, was lost to the world. The loss was a cataclysm, an event that would irrevocably alter the landscape of O'Connor's soul, both as a father and a public figure. The grief of a parent losing a child is a wound for which there is no measure, and for O'Connor, this profound pain would be forged into a new, solemn purpose in the wake of Hugh's passing. He channeled his private agony into public action, his face, etched with sorrow, appearing in stark public service announcements. He spoke for the Partnership for a Drug-Free America, now armed with a terrible authority. He used his own story, a father's worst nightmare, to lay bare the hidden dangers of substance abuse, to reveal the true human cost of addiction, fighting to prevent other families from walking the same path of sorrow. From a wound so deep it would cast a shadow over the rest of his days. From that day forward, O'Connor forged a new purpose from his pain, dedicating his life to raising the alarm on the scourge of addiction. He stepped into the public glare, not as a performer, but as a grieving father, speaking with raw honesty about his son's private war. He pleaded for a new era of compassion, for intervention, for anyone lost in the same darkness that had consumed his child. This crusade was a testament to his profound resilience, the alchemy of turning an unthinkable private tragedy into a public mission, cementing O'Connor's legacy not merely as a television icon, but as a father who fought for others, a compassionate advocate. And yet, behind the curtain of this public life, another, older drama festered. The man who embodied Archie Bunker was famously unfiltered, a titan of the screen who never softened his true opinions. And when it came to the people he held in low regard, his feelings toward Rob Reiner, the man who played his television son, the meathead Michael Stivic, were in a class all their own. In hushed conversations and candid interviews, O'Connor made no effort to conceal the depths of his contempt. He once confessed with a chilling bluntness, "I've never hated anyone as much as I hated Rob Reiner." This was not the fleeting friction of the Hollywood machine, no momentary clash of artistic temperaments. It was a deep and enduring animosity, a cold war that O'Connor himself admitted had poisoned his experience on the set of his greatest triumph for years on end. Unlike the typical tensions that simmer on a soundstage, their conflict was intensely personal. It was a chasm, born from fundamental, irreconcilable differences in temperament, in ego, and in the sacred approach to their craft. O'Connor was convinced that Reiner's very presence, his attitude, systematically eroded the collaborative trust that was meant to be the bedrock of the celebrated cast. As O'Connor would later explain, a significant part of the fracture was Reiner's approach to the work itself. Rob always thought he was smarter than everyone else, he recalled, that he had some moral high ground, just because he played the liberal son. For O'Connor, a man fiercely protective of his own meticulous craft, and profoundly committed to the raw authenticity of his performance, this was anathema. He recoiled at what he perceived as Reiner's unearned self-assurance. To O'Connor, it wasn't simply about line readings or blocking. It was the palpable aura of superiority he felt Reiner carried onto the set, a silent, implicit judgment. It was the way he seemed to question O'Connor's authority, his very interpretation of the character he had made iconic. In private, O'Connor's descriptions of Reiner were scathing, arrogant, insufferable. He insisted that his co-star's conduct ventured far beyond the pale of normal artistic differences, crossing into a territory that felt, to him, like a deliberate and sustained campaign of disrespect. He saw Reiner as someone who not only challenged his professional integrity, but who threatened the delicate ecosystem of the entire production, forging a palpable tension that hung in the studio air. But O'Connor's disdain was also fed by the deeply personal vacuum at the heart of their relationship, or, more accurately, the complete lack of one. In the closed world of a television set, where actors often forge familial bonds with their co-stars, sharing inside jokes, private histories, and a silent, mutual support, O'Connor found Reiner to be a figure of cold distance and condescension. He would later recall, his voice heavy with the memory, "There was never a moment, not a single one, where I felt Rob was my friend. He was always on a campaign to prove something," he continued, "always vying for some unseen prize, for the camera's attention. It was a relentless performance that O'Connor found profoundly exhausting, and in essence, it left him utterly isolated on his own set. He was perpetually on the defensive, forced to protect not only the integrity of his character, but the very bedrock of his own professional worth, against what he perceived as Reiner's unending challenges. Their time together on set, he described, became a landscape of tense silences, awkward exchanges, and a hostility that crackled just beneath the surface. Reiner's conduct, he felt, was an amplifier, turning the quiet frustrations of long, arduous shooting days and the sparks of creative disagreement into a roaring fire. And yet, it was never just a matter of personal dislike that fueled O'Connor's animosity. Beneath it all, there was a profound philosophical war being waged. Archie Bunker was, by design, a man of staggering complexity, a tangled knot of human contradiction. His many nuances demanded from O'Connor the most delicate and careful of interpretations. Reiner's approach to his own character, meanwhile, was a blunt instrument, leaning heavily on pointed satire and ideological declaration. O'Connor felt this flattened their dynamic, reducing the potent father-son conflict into a monotonous, weekly moral lecture. He once remarked, the frustration still evident, it ceased to be about acting. It became about him attempting to teach me a lesson every single day about liberal versus conservative, about right versus wrong. I'm an actor, he stated with finality, not a preacher. This ideological friction turned their scenes into a treacherous landscape, fraught with unseen tension. O'Connor felt he was constantly forced to navigate the currents of Reiner's political impulses, all while fighting to stay true to the complicated, flawed, and deeply human essence of Archie. But despite the sheer intensity of these feelings, O'Connor's discipline was absolute. They rarely, if ever, erupted on camera. For while he may have personally loathed Reiner, his artistry ensured that the very real tension between them was channeled, adding a startling layer of authenticity to their scenes rather than poisoning them. And here lies the great, unspoken paradox. O'Connor's genuine animosity may have been the very alchemy that made the volatile interactions between Archie and Michael so utterly compelling for millions of viewers. It's a profound irony that O'Connor himself would almost certainly have dismissed in private, a small, cold consolation for a war fought far from the camera's gaze. His conviction never wavered, a stance he would carry to the very end of his days. He would later reflect, of all the people I've worked with and could not abide, Rob Reiner was in a class all his own, more so than any other soul I ever met. In the end, Carroll. O'Connor's profound animosity toward Rob Reiner was a mirror to his own intricate nature. He was a man consumed by his art, a fierce guardian of his own artistic truth, utterly unafraid to challenge those he deemed intolerable. And while the world saw the affable, if sometimes volatile, Archie Bunker, behind the studio lights, O'Connor's fraught relationship with Reiner exposed a deep, personal schism that would come to define his time on Time's All in the Family asterisk. Their story stands as a stark reminder that even the most legendary on-screen partnerships can conceal behind-the-scenes tensions every bit as dramatic, and perhaps more profound, than the scripted conflicts an audience so readily embraced. Carroll O'Connor, the titan of television, forever immortalized as Archie Bunker, took his final bow at the age of 76, on the 21st of June, 2001. His life's curtain fell in Culver City, California, a town synonymous with the dream factory he helped build, a place that had been the backdrop for so much of O'Connor's legendary career. The official cause was a sudden heart attack, a tragic final act in a long, silent struggle with the complications of diabetes, an illness he had quietly fought for years. Diabetes, a condition known for its unforgiving toll on the body's cardiovascular system, had likely, over time, laid siege to O'Connor's heart, leaving it vulnerable to that one, final, fatal event. His passing was more than a headline. It was the closing of a chapter in the great American storybook of television. For O'Connor had been a colossal presence on the small screen, breathing life, humor, and a powerful social critique into the character of Archie Bunker. It was a role that became more than entertainment. It was a cultural landmark, a symbol of the complex truths of the working class experience in the heart of America. Following his death, O'Connor was laid to rest at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery. It is a sacred ground in Los Angeles, the chosen final sanctuary for so many of Hollywood's immortal figures. The selection of Westwood was a fitting tribute, reflecting not only O'Connor's towering place in the industry, but also the deep reverence he commanded from his contemporaries. And there, in a gesture of profound and enduring love, a cenotaph was placed, honoring his son, Hugh. A poignant gesture, etched into the very stone that would mark O'Connor's final resting place. It spoke volumes of the unbreakable bond between a father and his son, a testament to how Hugh had become the very center of O'Connor's world, a son he had welcomed into his life during a pivotal chapter, a turning point in the actor's own personal odyssey. This cenotaph served not merely as a memorial to Hugh, but as a silent, powerful symbol of O'Connor's unwavering devotion to family. It was a stark reminder of how the lines had blurred, where the private man and the public icon were inextricably woven together. And so, the gravestone itself carries a dual weight bearing the legend of the father and the heartbreaking memory of the son. It stands today, a lasting monument not just to a celebrated career, but to a complex life and the enduring love he held for his family.